Podcast Answer Man, episode number 158.
Entertaining, educational, and encouraging content that makes a difference.
This is GSPN.TV.
Join the community.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft, and of course, this is the podcast about podcasting. And today, I am very excited to bring to you an interview. It's been a while since I've brought you an interview, and don't worry, for those of you who love the technical how-to questions and answers and all that stuff, we'll be back to that next week. But today, I'm very eager to give you this content. Well, my friends, I am excited, as I said, to bring to you this interview, and I want to let you know today's interview is going to be beneficial, I believe, to podcasters for many different reasons. One is because you're going to get a different aspect of podcasting outside of just Cliff's perspective. And also, I believe what you're going to get is the idea of how you can use podcasting in business and how, and honestly, folks, I'm going to tell you there are two reasons why I am kind of doing this for my own benefit. And let me explain to you right up front, because I want to be open, I want to be authentic, and let you guys know what my agenda is, if I happen to have an agenda in my podcast. And for this episode, I do. I have two personal agendas that I want to let you know right up front. Number one, I want to know how podcasting can be beneficial for somebody who has a business that pretty much their client base is pretty much tied to a geographical location. And the reason why I want to know this is because my own family has an insurance agent in northern Kentucky, and my dad comes to me all the time and says, Cliff, I'm thinking about launching a podcast. Tell me why this is going to be beneficial to me, to our business to do this. And so I'm really eager to getting that aspect. I have some thoughts of my own on why it might be, but I'm actually going to talk to somebody today who has done this and has experienced some benefits. Also, my second personal agenda here today is that, I am going to be explaining, I'm going to have somebody on that I have personally helped as a consultant / coach. And I'm going to let them let this entire episode, it's going to, indirectly, it's going to be an entire episode that's a testimonial for my services and what I can provide for you. And so that's probably going to come out here in the conversation as well. I do want to let you know, none of this is scripted. We have no outline, no clue where this interview is going to go, but I am excited about it. And so right now, I want to introduce you all to my good friend and client, Dr. Joseph Valenzi. He actually has a dental organization down in Florida called White Wolf Dental. You can find that at whitewolfdental.com. But get this, if you were to actually, instead of going to White Wolf Dental, you heard about a podcast called Talk to the Dentist, you could actually go to talktothedentist.com, and it's also going to take you to a special place on his website. And I encourage you guys to check that out. So without any further ado, I have on the line with me today, Dr. Joe Valenzi. Joe, how are you? Hey,
I'm doing great, Cliff. Good to talk to you.
Well, I am glad to have you on here. Joe, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and where how did you come across this idea of doing podcasting?
Well, it kind of expanded beyond my initial concept once I met you, Cliff. But it all started when I got my first iPhone, which is not too much before I started talking to you. I had really never heard of podcasting at all. But when I got my iPhone and started finding out all the things that are available on there, I just couldn't believe how awesome podcasts were. The fact that you can go look around for anything that you're interested in and find somebody who's talking about it. I mean, what a fantastic resource. I mean, if you're interested in gardening or decorations or whatever your interests are, there was something about podcasting which was just really exciting. So after I listened to it for a while, of course, I'm always want to check out the dental angle. I wanted to see what kind of podcasts were available for dentists. And my first thought, of course, is to look for what's available for me as a dentist as a continuing education kind of thing. And I certainly found quite a few podcasts for that. But then I thought, what's out there for patients what kind of information is out there. If I were a patient looking for information on dentistry, could I find information? And there really wasn't a whole lot out there. So, being somewhat egotistical, I thought, okay, I have something to say. I could talk about dentistry. I love talking about dentistry. I love explaining what we do and sharing our information. I thought this would just be fun to put out there. I got to say, it wasn't initially so much of a marketing thing as just it would be fun just to put this stuff out there. And secondarily, it would be a way to market the practice. Now, once I started looking up, how do I go about doing this, because I had no clue, and I found your name under Podcast Consultants, and we started talking. You, of course, explained how we can make this something much, much bigger. And I don't know if you want to start explaining how we did that, or if you want me to go ahead and talk about that. But it became something a lot more involved.
Well, so I would love for this episode to be as much about you and you talking and you sharing your experience than me okay. Going on about it, because I obviously get every single week to talk to these folks for about an hour. So, but yeah, so you basically you did a search for Podcast Consultant on Google. I pulled up, and let me ask you this just real quick: between the time you actually found me and the time you actually contacted me, let me ask you, how long of a period of time was that between the two?
Oh, a day.
2
days. Yeah. I don't waste time. When I decided I wanted to do something, I listened to a podcast Answer Man episode or two, and I could see that you knew a lot of information, and I knew it was going to be a lot easier for me to just hire you than to try to listen to 150 episodes, or I don't know how many you had at the time, but it was a lot even back then, trying to piece it all together, assimilate all that information. I wanted to get going with it. So I knew that not only would I need to get equipment from you, but if you could help me just lead me through the process, you'll save me weeks, if not months worth of work. And it worked out exactly that way. This
is excellent. If you don't mind, I'm going to bring out a couple of things here. First and foremost, you are a little unique in that most people who find me through Google, it's a standard. Sometimes it's usually between a week to 3 weeks before they actually make the contact after they find me on Google. But for you, it's obviously it was a quicker turnaround. I would like to ask you this. How helpful in the decision to hire me as your consultant / coach for podcasting and to buy a lot of equipment from me and to take my advice, how helpful was it for you to have a bunch of episodes where you could hear me talking about my area of expertise, giving information freely without really holding anything back, to help you develop a trust and respect for the amount of work that I could possibly do for you? Do you think that could have happened otherwise?
No. I would have, if you didn't have those episodes, I would have done my normal kind of decision making, which I would do a lot of research. I would call up 4 or 5 people, and I would talk to you and try to get a feel for who you are, what your level of knowledge is, how you're trying to approach my situation. Are you trying to sell me a bunch of stuff, or are you looking out for really for my best interests? You have to go through that whole process of who am I dealing with? Who are these people? But I got that all over with by listening to your podcast. I got an understanding that not only are you very knowledgeable, but you're being very generous in sharing all of that information online. And like I said, had I had more time and had money been more of an issue, I might have just listened to all of the episodes and figured it out myself. But if anybody who's interested in doing this kind of thing, if you want to just get up and going quickly, hire Cliff, and you'll just get up running very quickly. And then you can add to your knowledge by continuing to listen to the episodes, which is what I continue to do, because once you get started, there's always you need to increase your depth of knowledge. But listening to your podcasts and having that information freely was absolutely critical. And that's kind of what happened with my podcast too. I realized that I'm not trying to become a dental star. I think it's really good to have the information out there that I'm putting out about all these different dental topics, so that people can look up if they're if they're facing getting root canals or implants. They could hear at length somebody talking about at least my opinion about it, which is just a good source of information. But the really key thing for me as my business is that they get a chance to meet me without actually taking that step of coming into my office. And I got a chance to meet you before I ever pick up that phone to call you up. And I could take as much time as I want to get to kind of try you on. Do I like your approach? Do you seem like a nice guy? How knowledgeable are you? You just get that. It's sort of like online dating, perhaps. I don't know. Not that I've done that, but
no, this is great. And what I want to let people know from my side of this is I do recall when you first contacted me. At the time, you actually, and of course, you've been listening along after coming on as a client. I know you've been listening, but for those who have been listening for a while, you guys know that my business has been absolutely crazy, and we had some major things happening back in September, December, all the way from September through December. Complete explosion of the number of clients that I took on. You came in right at that time.
Before the line got long.
I know, but here's the situation though. When I remember when you called, there was no sales pitch, there was no elevator pitch, there was no me selling you on myself. You had, and tell me if I'm wrong, and trust me, if I'm wrong, I want you to tell me even here in the podcast. But in my memory, if it serves me correctly, you had already made the decision to hire me before you picked up the phone and called me.
Oh, absolutely.
See,
absolutely.
Now, folks, if you don't get anything else, this is something I want you to get. He had already formed a relationship with me and understood what I had of value to offer to him. And so I didn't, and this is true for all of my business that comes from people who hear about me through my podcasting. I have not, in the last 2 years, I have not once had to try to sell somebody on my services. Now, I have had people who have contacted me who were given my business card by somebody they know, and those people did call and they wanted to quote unquote interview me to see what I had to know and stuff like that. And I said, you know what, I'll tell you what, here's what I'm going to do so that we can make this as easy as possible. I'm going to ask you to go to podcastanswerman.com and listen to a minimum of 2 episodes. Once you've done that, if you decide that I can help you, then give me a call. We'll schedule an appointment. And I do that with all the people who contact me because I want to make sure that I'm not wasting my time trying to do something that my content already speaks for itself. And so this is one way that having a podcast for a business communicates to people who you are, all those things you said. How do I communicate? What is my level of skill and knowledge, and how willing? What is my personality? What are my motives? You can tell a lot about a person by the way they speak, and especially how much they share. And so I'm very glad to point that out, and that came out of here. So okay, so you got this thing. Now you're a dentist, and obviously you said it wasn't your main goal to quote unquote be the, I think you said dental star, but one of the things that podcasting can do in a niche area such as podcasting, in a niche area such as being a dentist, in a niche area such as being somebody who is into knitting, whatever the case may be, if you are one of the very few people who are doing a podcast and a blog associated to this niche topic, you can become known as a thought leader in this industry. Even though there are people out there who have written many books and are on speaking circuits around the world and all these other things, it's very easy for you to become the expert in the field through a podcast in a matter of a short period of time. So that's just something that naturally has occurred, that people are turning to you. Do you find people now are coming to your podcast for advice about dental issues that have never been your clients?
And calling up the office, you mean, to find out more about it?
Yeah, just anything at all, any emails, feedback, people who have never been to your office ever before, who are finding your podcast and providing you feedback saying, wow, thanks for this information.
I do. You, and I'm sure everybody who's involved in podcasting, it is kind of cool when you look at the tracking numbers to see where people are listening to your podcast from, and you see it's all over the United States and many places in the world. So you do get emails and comments from people from all over the place saying thank you, and I'm sorry I'm in California so I can't see you, but if I ever move out that way, I would be sure to look you up. That's really nice, and that's all nice stuff. But to me, besides the marketing aspect, which I'll go into just after we talk about this, but the best part is that relationship building. It is so cool that when patients come in nowadays, it used to be that it was kind of word of mouth marketing, and maybe you went into a phone book. Okay, and I'm sure being a dentist is typical of small businesses like your parents' insurance business. So you don't know that much about the person. Phone books were kind of nice because if you included a picture, at least they could see a picture of you. So they at least had a sense of, your ethnicity, perhaps, if that's important to them. So that was a tiny bit of information. Then along came websites, and if you had a decent website, they could at least learn a little bit more about you and read a bit more as much as they'd like to on your website. But then to actually hear you speak and really kind of get to know you, now when patients come in, just like I was kind of pre-sold when I spoke to you, they've really selected me. There's less of the sense of, I came in to see this guy, but we really didn't hit it off, and I'm just going to get my record sent somewhere else. If they don't like me, they're going to know that before they come in. So perhaps I've turned off a lot of patients. It's quite possible I'm scaring away scads of patients. I don't know, but at least the few that trickle in, they're pretty much accepting of who I am, and they really want what I have to offer. Cliff, you've helped me develop the website. Not helped me develop, you developed the website, so all of the technologies that we use, and that's kind of what we are. So patients that are coming in to look for those, either that just approach to technology or the specific technologies that we offer. So I had a patient the other day. She came in and she needed a root canal, and I said, okay, here's how I feel about root canals. And she stopped me and she says, you don't have to bother. I listened to the podcast. I know what you're going to say.
I love that.
So I had to like, wow, that's really working. And she just smiled. She said, I know I can have an implant. I could do this and that. This is what I want to do. It's like, okay, great. And you've heard everything I'm going to say, because what I said on the podcast is exactly what I'm going to tell you if you were sitting in the chair and we were having this discussion.
I want to stop you right there. Normally in an interview I would never interject and say I disagree, but I'm gonna disagree with you there, because Dr. Valenzi, there's no way that you sit down and have an hour to 3 hour conversation with every person that needs a root canal.
No.
But,
you're absolutely right.
But I happen to know if somebody's facing a root canal, there are at least 2 to 3 or 4 hours worth of content that are directly related to that type of person on your website, where they can get for free everything you have to say and think and about all the benefits and drawbacks of every option that's available.
Yes, and you're right. I can't do that. So it's better. It's better than talking to me in the office.
Exactly. Because here's the situation, and I want to share this for folks out there. Joe's not only a client, but I look to him as a trusted advisor when it comes to things, all things dental now. And here I am in Kentucky. So I go to the dentist, and it turns out that I have this cracked tooth, and this tooth is in really bad shape, and so much so that it actually part of it falls off. And I'm looking at the possibility of a root canal or an extraction and stuff like that. So I send Joe an email, or actually I go into the dentist, and my dentist is very sweet. She is a very nice lady. You can tell she cares a lot about her patients, and she literally spent 12 to maybe 15 minutes explaining my options. But I mean, within that 12 to 15 minutes, she explained 3 different options. And she explained what those options were. She didn't have the opportunity outside of cost to talk about the benefits and drawbacks. So all I got was 3 options and price tags. And that was it. And of course, how much more could I expect a dentist to give me of their time without me having to pay a whole lot more money? And so I sent you an email and says, hey, what do you think about this? And of course, what did you do? The same thing I do with Podcast Answer Man. It's like, you know what? That'd be a great episode of a podcast. And you recorded an episode. And I tell you what, it is so, you put my mind at ease with your content and gave me so much more than what even if you were my dentist and I was in Port Orange, Florida, and I came into your office, you gave me so much more information through your podcast than you could have ever possibly given me face to face. And it's not because you're neglectful. It's just because you have to be a good steward of your time and keep your business moving forward. And so I would imagine as a dentist and as a doctor, you want to give your patients as much value and as much information to make the most wise decision. And this is a more efficient and effective way for you to get that and disseminate that information out there.
And we'll even direct our patients to the podcasts after we have a consultation. We'll tell them, we're talking about laser gum treatment here, and I know you probably have a lot more questions. You might want to listen to this podcast. We talk about it for almost an hour. And then you can go to the website and look at the manufacturer's website and go gather some information, and then you can come back in and we'll have another consultation. If you've got some more questions, we'll be happy to answer them. But probably their questions will be answered, in the podcast. So it's a great resource.
That is awesome. And
I'll tell you how else we're using it too, Cliff. This is probably not something that maybe is as applicable to other fields, but it's important in my office. We have a fairly large office with a fairly large staff, and we want everybody to be on the same page. So we're constantly training. And it's critical that all of my staff has the same answers to the questions that I'm going to give. I don't want people giving diverse answers. They got to know what our opinion is and what our policies are on these kinds of things. So if we have new staff members or even old staff members that have not heard me say this as much, or they want more background information than I can even give them in the office, we'll say, listen to my podcast on implants. And that's our approach to when we decide to use implants and when we'll decide not to. So it's a terrific training tool for our staff.
That's amazing. As a matter of fact, that never occurred to me. I've heard of people using podcasting as internal communications. Now I've heard of that, but I never thought about a podcast that has the same podcast that has both the marketing aspect, the branding aspect, but also the educational and training aspect for the staff. But man, now that you say that, makes perfect sense. You're sitting there explaining your opinions on these procedures, and now what you can do as the employer, you can say, listen, it's a requirement that you guys are listening to this content, and I want to make sure that if you disagree or if you have any thoughts about anything I've shared in these podcasts, you let me know. Otherwise, I expect your answers to be the same exact answers that I gave, so that we're all communicating in the same way. Heaven forbid you have a patient that comes in and Dr. Valenzi says, hey, we really need to extract this and put a crown in, and then all of a sudden you have somebody else on your staff who says, you know what, we are going to extract this, but man, I really don't think a crown's the best thing. I really believe that we need to do or not a crown on an, anyway, I know you don't do a crown on an extraction, but anyway, a root canal and a crown, but another staff member says, no, we need to do an extraction and an implant. That would be horrible.
Oh yeah, you start getting a feeling that something's really wrong with the practice or the doctor or whatever. Exactly. And it's just anybody in the staff that understands the whole thought process behind it. It's they know where we're coming from, but it's amassing all that time, that training time. That's difficult to find the time during the day to do that stuff. So
well, here's the other thing I like about this, and you're talking about the training aspect and having these people understand so that you're on the same page. But as an employer and having your employees listen to this, I would imagine this improves the employer/employee relationship.
The employer-employee. Well, they always appreciate. Well, it's good. It is good for them too, because they will only be trained more, but
What I mean, let me go further into that and to explain what I mean. What I mean by this is that, when I've worked for people in the past, I've worked a lot of different places before I went into the family business of insurance. And I always knew my employers, and of course they were nice and I had respect for them, but I never knew them as a person. I never knew them on a deeper level. I never really felt like I knew what some of their likes and some of their interests were. But I can imagine that, with you having 23 episodes of your content, some of your personal life has slipped into this episode, at least some of your values and your principles and stuff of this nature, things that probably you may not have had the opportunity to express all of this stuff about your own personality to all of your employees. But now they can listen to this and it's like, wow, I didn't know that Dr. Valenzi, thought this way about that. That's pretty awesome. And they probably feel a more personal connection to you.
I'm sure they'll get some of that. And I'm sure in a lot of businesses, that's probably a really big thing. But of course, in dentistry, I'm sitting knee to knee with somebody for 8 hours a day. So we know each other pretty intimately, I think. Probably more intimately than their spouses do sometimes. So at least in our case, we're chatty. Some doctors are not so chatty. We're pretty chatty.
Sure. Well, obviously, so that makes perfect sense for you. But for other businesses out there where you don't have that knee to knee, sitting there in front of somebody's mouth talking for a couple hours, you guys, as a business owner, these relationships, with our employees are very vital. And
great chance to talk to them on a one-to-one basis like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Dr. Valenzi, what are some other things? Do you have any other thoughts? You said you were going to get into the marketing aspect. What are your thoughts there?
Oh yeah, okay. So that was a huge thing, Cliff, and I thank you so much for that. I contacted you specifically about podcasting. Set me up with a podcast. I'm gonna get a name, and we're gonna start a website, and it's going to be the podcast. But you told me how that was really that's fine, but it's underutilizing the potential of what we could be doing by tying in the website and the podcast as one package within a WordPress installation. And by doing so, we're able to piggyback the traffic that we get on the Talk to the Dentist podcast with the traffic that you're getting to the main website, so that we're improving our visibility in Google and in search engine optimization. And that was a revelation, and it has been very effective. You took us from page 3, if I search for Port Orange dentists, to page 1. And we're always about number 3 because I can't get past the people who have the sites that say portorangedentist.com. They're always going to be rated higher than me. But just based on the amount of traffic that goes there and the searches that people do, whatever criteria that they use, we are solid up there on the first page and in the first couple, and have been almost immediately after doing that.
That is awesome. And I want to tell you that being number 3 in the list is perfectly fine. In fact, I'm always number 2 in the list because of somebody else who has, some other folks have podcastconsultant.com and podcastconsultant.net. So again, Google likes those official domains first. But, when it comes down to it, people do these searches, and what are they doing? They're making that decision based upon the information they find on a website, whether or not this is somebody I want to get to know better. Is this somebody I want to trust with my stuff? And then all of a sudden they come and they do that search, and they go to the 3rd or 4th one in the list. It's White Wolf Dental Group, and by golly, not only do they have the Meet Our Staff page and about who we are, but there's this podcast, and then all of a sudden it's like, what's available, what looks best, what's the strongest, here's some other ones. Extractions, what you need to know before getting a tooth removed. You've got on here implants to replace a single missing tooth. Are implants best for a single missing tooth? What is it like to have this done? And of course, you have all of these different topics that, probably the reason they're coming to your website is because they need work done. And you're actually you've got content, audio content specifically answering the questions they have in their mind before they even come in. And they are, just like you did for me, they've made the decision, I'm coming in to see Dr. Valenzi.
And when they search on those specific terms, if they're facing a particular procedure and they type in laser periodontal surgery or CEREC crown or just something that they've heard of, I've got a podcast dedicated to that's going to pop up because it's the best fit for that search. So without having to create 400 websites, each with those names, you're getting really good search utilization on those terms. So it's just genius. But even more than that, though, too. I mean, as you've explained to me, Cliff, part of what helps your search engine positioning is the freshness of your site. And when you have a traditional static website, that got updated, as you asked me when we first did this. Well, when did you update your website last? And I felt really good because it was only like 9 months ago. We had just refreshed it after like 2 years. So I felt like it was, terrific. And it was a good website. There was nothing wrong with the website. But updating it 9 months ago is not like updating it every week.
Yes.
And updating it week after week after week and just constantly banging it. That just is a totally different animal. So not only you're forcing yourself to have a web presence by all of these kinds of things, but more than that, even more than that, an extra benefit of that is that we're in control of our website now.
Yes.
So we can I can when I hire a new staff person, or if the staff person wants their biography changed, or we want to make a little video about something, like if you look on our podcast, I actually made one video podcast of this new 3D scanner we got that I was just so excited about. This is just absolutely awesome technology. So I didn't think a podcast would do it justice. I had to do a little video thing. But we can do that. Or we can put just text entries in, just text blog entries in. Or we can put a whole new page in, like I put a whole new page in, a static page dedicated to the 3D scanner. And so we're in control of that. That not only keeps it fresh, keeps our costs down because we're not paying some web designer to make every single change, which would take us months to do anyway. Going back and forth. Gee, I don't like the text of that. Could you change it? I don't like that picture. It's totally us.
Right.
And even above that is the fact that what's coming across is us.
Yes.
Because we're doing it ourselves. It's like our own scrapbook. This is my house. You're walking into my house. You're sitting in my living room. People can do it better, and they can make it prettier, and they can make it fancier. But you're putting yourself into this project, and that's unduplicatable. And in my kind of business, you're selling yourself. You got to like the person that you're going to, and I'm telling you who I am. I'm laying it all out there for you. I'm just being very open about it, and that should come across in the site. And that's just so much better to me because it's authentic. Like when you talk, Cliff, you're very open about your personal life. You're just open about who you are, and that's a comforting kind of feeling. So no web designer, no matter how good they are, is going to be able to get that across. And so not only costs less, but it's more genuine, and I think it makes for an unassailable marketing position because nobody else can take that away from me. Somebody else can maybe get the same equipment or, offer the same services, but they're not going to be me. And the more of me that comes across, I think the better it is for my business. That,
my friend, that right there is the next big thing that I want to pull out is that, a lot of people will say to me, Cliff, I want to do a podcast, but I'm just not sure. There's already 5 other podcasts on this topic. And I'm like, okay, but so they'll say, I just don't think that there's room in the marketplace for another podcast on this topic. And I said, wait a second, how many other podcasts out there have your perspective on that topic? And it's like, so how many of those are out there? And they say, well, none. I mean, I'm not on any of those podcasts. Well, then there is absolutely zero podcast on the topic with your perspective. And by golly, there's only one way to get your perspective, your personality, your brand, who you are, your thoughts, your opinions on this topic, unless you go out and do it. And you know, the thing is to go out and be remarkable. You know, go out and be unique. Go out and be yourself, and let the people decide what they like best. And I'll give you a perfect example of this for those who are, mostly for the benefit of those who are listening. I started podcasting as a hobby, and I started podcasting with a podcast devoted to the TV show Lost. When I started podcasting, there were several other podcasts in the field. All right. Many podcasts in the field. I think there was about 5 of them at the time that were active. There had been several more than that had started and stopped. But I will tell you, the 5 that were out there, 3 of them were really good. In fact, I was subscribed to all 3 of them, listened to every episode, and I loved them. And so when I thought about doing a podcast, I debated back and forth whether or not I would do a podcast on this topic, because there were already so many out there. And so I started a podcast called Generally Speaking. I was going to talk about anything and everything. And when the very first episode I did, I talked about Lost. And all of a sudden, I got just tons of emails saying, wow, I love you and your wife's perspective on Lost. This is something that has been missing from the Lost podcasting community. Will you do us all a favor? Will you please continue to do a podcast just devoted to the TV show Lost? Today, that podcast has more than 60,000 subscribers. We are tied with the #1 Lost podcast out there. And we have people who travel from all over the world to come watch a TV show with us twice a year.
That's amazing.
So don't let absolutely. What you're saying is perfectly true. There might be another podcast out there devoted to insurance. There might be another one out there devoted to family law. There might be another one out there to marketing. There might be 50 billion other podcasts out there devoted to technology. But how many have your perspective? And that, my friends, is what's important. Joe, is there anything else that you wanted to share?
Well, yeah, and I'm not. This is something to think about if you want to get involved in this. But it's only going to be as good as the effort that you're putting into it. And this is kind of a good thing, because I think people, in general, are lazy. And if you're thinking that, well, I don't want to do this because then everybody's going to want to become a podcaster, and everybody in my community, every insurance agent or every car wash or whatever business you have is going to want to do it. They might want to do it, but very few people are going to, because there's a certain amount of work to it. Even though you're just talking, you have to prepare. You've got to go through the effort of creating the WordPress website
and learning it.
And learning it. And boy, that has been. I got to say, I enjoy it, Cliff. I've really been having a lot of fun learning this, but it's like a whole other little specialty that I have to learn, and it's a fairly steep path. Even though you make it as easy as possible, and you make it getting going very easy, as you want to do things to it, every little thing you want to do, it's another little learning curve, and many people might start this kind of thing, but to keep it going requires persistence and dedication. So if you think you're going to go out there and be another Cliff Ravenscraft and have all of these podcasts and stuff, very few people are going to be you, Cliff, because it's very hard work to be you. And even if you're just trying to make a single website devoted to your business to help your business, if you want to make it good, it's hard to make it good. So you will never have competition, because it's just hard to do this stuff and do it well.
Yeah.
So that's a positive thing, though, because if you're going to put that kind of effort out, you're going to have that part of the market cornered. You're not going to have competition for it. And gosh, I've been doing this now for, when did we do this, Cliff? Like in last September, October, something like that. So it's been at least a half a year. I'm sure everybody in my community knows about it. I advertise and market in traditional media, so they see my website, and word has gotten around about all this stuff, so I'm sure they're all aware of what I'm doing. But there's 0 people anywhere in this county that are doing this. So they all can do it. There's nothing that's stopping them except the effort.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to ask you just a couple other questions, and then I'll let you go because I know you have a very busy day ahead of you. The other questions I have is, obviously we talked about the website and you spent some money there because you had a beautiful, I want to say you had a beautiful website. It was static, but it was beautiful. And of course, you hired me to completely port that over to WordPress and train you how to use it and all of that stuff. There was an expense involved there. I don't think we'll go into the numbers of how much was expense there, but there was some expense there. And then you made a significant investment in equipment. Can you tell people how you feel about the equipment? Maybe what you thought about the pricing of the equipment ahead of time, and then what you think about what you've gotten as a result of using that equipment.
Oh, the equipment was, it was a moderate investment, but if you're running a business of any size, we all make major investments in marketing. My Yellow Page ad, I think, is like $2,500 a month. I've got television ads that are running. There's a lot of marketing expenses that are involved. So compared to if you're doing any kind of marketing in traditional media, this is a small expense. Don't let the equipment expense stop you at all. In fact, I'm gonna probably hook up with you, Cliff, so we can get somebody, so I can get some phone calls, and I've got some people that I want to call up and have interviews with too. And I know I need some other equipment for that. So that's tiny, and it's a non-recurring expense. So you buy it, and it's done. And it really makes a big difference because the sound quality really is a big deal. Cliff, you talk about this over and over, but it's really true. People are getting the impression about you and your business based upon things like how the sound quality is when they're listening to your podcast. If it sounds like it was recorded on a 10-cent microphone, how could you be selling quality services if you sound like crap?
Yeah.
It's just like, how does your stationery look? How does your sign look in front of your business? What do they see when they walk in the front of your business? If you're going to sell quality, it should leach through. It should be at every single level. So there was no question in my mind that I wanted it to sound like a $100,000 recording studio, or make people think that it's a $100,000 recording studio. Now, we spent considerably less than that, but I think the sound quality is maybe not as good as yours, Cliff, because you have those really fancy mics, but it's pretty good. Of course, I'm not speaking on that now. This is just a Skype headset. But if you listen to the podcast, I think it's pretty good. I think the level's pretty decent. Right, Cliff?
Your audio sounds excellent, and that's why. Well, it's one of the reasons why I said right at the beginning of this episode. Listen, if anything, this episode's an entire advertisement just for me, because folks, I'm telling you, go to talktothedentist.com, click play on any of those episodes, and you'll hear the professionalism, you'll hear the knowledge, the wisdom, the free advice. I mean, you'll hear it all. And you'll get to hear the personality. You'll get to you will make judgments upon whether or not this is a guy you would ever want to do business with based upon those things that you're going to hear in that episode. And I encourage anybody to go to talktothedentist.com and listen to it. And do me a favor, if you go there and you listen to an episode or two or whatever, do me a favor, leave a comment on his blog. Let him know that you heard about him through podcastanswerman.com. Dr. Joe Valenzi, I want to say thank you very much for coming and sharing your time with us this morning. It has been a huge privilege and an honor, and I'm certain that you've given a lot of people who have businesses who are on the fence about whether or not to launch that podcast some more reasons on why they should have started yesterday.
Oh, and Cliff, thank you so much for all you've done for my business and giving me something fun to learn and do as well as help my business. You've been a really terrific help, and I thank you so much for that, Cliff.
Well, my friends, that is going to wrap things up for this episode of the Podcast Answer Man. As I said, I was very excited to bring to you this particular interview. Dr. Joe Valenzi, he is a great guy, has a great podcast, and by the way, Joe is just one of the many clients that I've helped who have businesses that they want to build their brands online and have seen some successes way beyond their initial concept of just launching a podcast. And, of course, these days I am very blessed, and I'm so thankful to God every single day for the amount of work that has come my way. the only thing I hate about being so blessed with my work that I'm doing right now is that I'm currently booked at least a week in advance, and it's killing me because for the first 18 months of doing this business, it was like, somebody would call me up and I'm like, hey, we can get started tonight if you want. And I would be able to help them right then and there. And it just hurts me every time I have to say, well, I can fit you in next Tuesday or Wednesday. But hey, if you are thinking about podcasting, I would love to help you. I'd love to be your podcast consultant and your coach along the way. I'd love to take away those learning curves, help you make the transition into podcasting and extending your brand online. There's just so much that podcasting can do for you. And if this episode has helped encourage you and inspire you in that direction, why not give me a call at 859-757-1399. That's my direct number, 859-757-1399. I'd love to work with you personally, one-on-one. Also, you can email me, feedback@gspn.tv. Of course, gspn.tv is my entire network of podcasts that I run. And if you've never checked out some of the other shows that I do, I'd encourage you to check those out, gspn.tv. And finally, if you want to leave questions for future episodes of Podcast Answer Man, like I said, I'm going back to my Q&A as much as possible here for Podcast Answer Man. So give us your questions for future shows, and the voicemail feedback hotline is 859-795-4067. Again, that's 859-795-4067. Folks, I hope and pray that every one of you who are listening to this podcast will have great success in building your brand and building relationships with people online. That is, and doing it not for the purpose of getting rich, not for the purpose of what do I get in return, but what can you give to people, and people will naturally desire to give back to you. It is an awesome, awesome way to live life and to do business, to give back some of your time for free and give it away freely. Let people have it. And don't worry about whether or not, that's going to cost you business down the road. It's only going to lead to more people to trust you and want to do business with you. I know this from experience. May God richly bless you. We'll talk to you next week. And until then, join the community.